I'm marrying her instead. The billionaire's voice cut through the garden like thunder. He pointed toward the woman at the gate. The priest had just asked the final question. 300 guests leaned forward. Cameras flashed. The bride smiled, proud in her white gown. Everyone expected the two words, "I do." But Edward Blackwood shook his head. No. A hush fell over the crowd. Gasps spread like wildfire. The bride's smile vanished. Her hands trembled. Edward didn't stop there. He looked toward the entrance again and said words no one would ever forget. I can't marry you. The woman I should marry is standing outside. All eyes turned to the gate. Slowly it opened. The woman who stepped in looked nothing like a bride. Her clothes were torn. Her hair was messy. Her feet were bare. A homeless woman. But what the guests didn't know, what nobody knew, was why Edward, the richest man in the city, would choose her over the woman waiting at the altar. To understand, we have to go back. Back to the day everything was destroyed. But first, I want to know something. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your country. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Now, let's go back to the moment that started it all. 10 years before this wedding. Edward Blackwood was not yet a billionaire. He was just a hard-working university student with big dreams. He studied business at Greenfield University. Edward was smart, focused, but he was also quiet. He did not trust people easily. Then one day he met Felicia Grant. Felicia was different from everyone else on campus. She was brilliant, but she was also kind. She helped classmates with assignments. She volunteered at shelters. She treated everyone with respect. Edward noticed her during a group project. At first, they only talked about school. But slowly their conversations became longer. They began studying together, then walking together after classes. Soon everyone on campus knew they were inseparable. Edward had never felt that way about anyone before. Felicia believed in him. She believed in his dreams. And Edward believed in her. They made plans for the future. Edward wanted to build a company. Felicia wanted to become a social worker. They promised each other something simple. No matter how hard life became, they would face it together. But someone else was watching them. And that person hated Felicia. Her name was Monica Adams. Monica came from a wealthy family. She was beautiful, confident, and used to getting everything she wanted. She had been interested in Edward for a long time, not because she loved him, but because she saw his potential. She knew he would become successful one day. But Edward had never paid attention to her. His eyes were always on Felicia, and Monica hated that. Her mother, Margaret Adams, hated it even more. Margaret was a woman who believed power was everything. She had built her life around wealth and influence. When she learned about Edward's potential future business plans, she made a decision. Her daughter needed to marry him one day, but there was only one problem: Felicia. So Margaret came up with a plan. A cruel plan. A plan that would destroy Felicia's life. One rainy night near the end of their final university year, everything changed. Edward had planned a surprise dinner for Felicia. He had rented a small private room at a restaurant. He even bought a simple ring. Not an engagement ring yet, but a promise ring. He wanted to show her how serious he was about their future. But Felicia never arrived. Edward waited. 1 hour passed. Then 2. He called her phone many times. No answer. Finally, worried, he went to her apartment. When he reached the door, he heard laughter inside. A man's voice. Edward's chest tightened. He knocked loudly. The door opened, and what he saw broke his heart. Felicia stood inside the room, and behind her was another man. The man wore only a shirt. Money was scattered across the table. Edward stared at the scene. His heart shattered instantly. Felicia tried to explain, but Edward did not listen. He felt betrayed, humiliated, destroyed. He threw the ring on the floor and walked away. That night, Edward swore he would never trust love again. What he did not know was that everything he saw that night was carefully staged. The man had been paid. The money had been planted. And Felicia had been trapped by Monica. Felicia tried to reach Edward for weeks, but he refused to answer her calls. Soon rumors began spreading across campus. People whispered that Felicia had been paid by rich men. Some students avoided her. Others insulted her. Her scholarship was suddenly canceled. Without money, she lost her apartment. Within months, her entire life collapsed. Meanwhile, Edward graduated and focused only on business. He worked day and night. He built companies. Investors noticed his talent. Within a few years, his success exploded. Edward Blackwood became one of the youngest billionaires in the country. And during those years, Monica slowly entered his life again. She pretended to support him, comfort him, understand him. Edward believed she was simply a loyal friend. Eventually, he began dating her. He thought love no longer mattered. Marriage would simply be a partnership, a business arrangement. And Monica was perfect for that. Or so he believed. Back in the present, Edward stood in front of the mirror on the morning of his wedding. Outside, the mansion garden looked like a fairy tale. White roses everywhere. Crystal decorations hanging from trees. A long red carpet leading to the altar. 300 important guests had arrived. Everything looked perfect. But something in Edward's heart felt wrong. He could not explain it. Just a strange feeling. Like something unfinished. Like a question from the past that had never been answered. Outside the gates of the mansion, a thin woman sat on the pavement. Her name was Felicia. 10 years had passed since her life collapsed. She had lived in shelters, sometimes on the streets, sometimes doing small jobs to survive. But she had never stopped trying to prove the truth. And finally, she found it. Inside her small bag was a recording that revealed everything. Today was Edward's wedding. If she did not reveal the truth today, she might never get another chance. So she waited at the gate, hoping someone would listen. Edward's best friend Thomas noticed the woman first. At first he almost walked past her, but something about her face felt familiar. Then she spoke. "Thomas." He froze. Took a moment, but then he recognized her. Felicia. He could hardly believe it. He quickly brought her inside through a side entrance. When she told him the truth, he felt sick. Then she showed him the recording. Thomas listened, and his face turned pale, because the voices were clear. Monica and her mother Margaret, laughing about the plan they created 10 years earlier, laughing about how easily Edward believed the lie. Thomas knew Edward needed to hear it immediately. Minutes later, Edward sat in a quiet room listening to the recording. Every word felt like a hammer hitting his chest. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, 10 years of anger, 10 years of pain, all built on a lie. When the recording ended, Edward sat silently. His hands trembled. Finally, he asked one question. "Where is she?" "Downstairs," Thomas replied. Edward walked slowly to the room. Felicia stood when he entered. They stared at each other for a long moment. 10 years of memories returned instantly. Edward's voice broke. "I'm sorry." Felicia looked at him quietly. "I never stopped believing you would learn the truth someday." 1 hour later, the wedding ceremony began. Guests filled every seat. Monica walked proudly down the aisle. Everything was perfect. The priest began speaking. Then came the vows. "Edward Blackwood, do you take Monica Adams to be your wife?" Edward looked at Monica. Then he spoke. "No." Gasps spread across the garden. Monica stared at him in shock. Edward turned toward the gate. "Bring her in." The gate opened. Felicia walked slowly down the red carpet, barefoot. The crowd whispered in confusion. Then Edward played the recording through the speakers. Monica's voice filled the garden, confessing everything. When the recording ended, silence covered the entire wedding. Monica tried to deny it, but no one believed her anymore. She stormed out of the garden in humiliation. Her mother followed, their plan destroyed. Edward turned toward Felicia. Tears filled his eyes. "I believed a lie for 10 years, he said. "But today, I finally know the truth." The guests watched quietly. Edward gently held Felicia's hands. "This wedding should have been yours a long time ago. Felicia smiled softly, and for the first time in 10 years, hope returned to her eyes. Months later, Felicia had a new home, a new job, a new life. But the most important thing was something neither of them expected. They slowly fell in love again, this time with truth, trust, and no lies between them. And sometimes, the most beautiful weddings are the ones that almost never happened. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and subscribe. See you in my next